Obviously Phil's going to go around with the mic, and we all know why we're here. It's a Q&A. The reason I've called this, and I have called this, is really out of respect to you as loyal supporters. There's going to be a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. You probably get off your back tonight. Hopefully you will. That's why you're here. I can accept that, but I think it's only fair that the manager of the club answers the sort of questions that you want answered. So that's why we're here tonight. As long as it's done in a respectful way, in which I've shown you, in respect of calling this meeting, forum, whatever you want to call it, then I'm sure everything will be okay. All right, so thanks for that.
Okay, so if you want to put your question, put your hands in the air if you want to ask a question, and I shall come round. Nobody? Excellent, we'll go home. Thank you.
Right here.
Right at the front. If you could stand up when you ask the questions so everyone can see you.
Thank you. Hi, Darren.
Hi.
I appreciate you doing this tonight. I think you're really brave. At the beginning of the season, the players were really good. There was fast and there was smart and sharp. Over the time, they seem to have lost their speed and sort of commitment to the club. Do you think there's an issue with the coaching team or the coaching methods that they're using?
Going back to the start of the season, obviously it was very similar to last season, where we started off with a flyer, doing really, really well. I've never felt really that I don't think the players, personally, I don't think the players have lacked commitment towards a football club. I think I generally see a bunch of lads that are going out there giving everything they've got. It may not look like that way at sometimes because confidence, will call it what you want. The coaching methods haven't, in my time, really changed in terms of how we go about our day-to-day business. Obviously the coaches have. You know, there's been even some changes this summer. We always try and work very, very hard to improve the players. That's our role. That's our job at the club. And this season we haven't got the quick improvement into the players, or the steady progression into the improvement of the players as quickly as I would have liked. I have to say that. But the coaching methods, I can't really sit here and say that everything we're doing at the moment is right, because it's clearly not. We have to improve in many areas, and I've spoke to my coaches and we've had meetings about we need to improve in terms of the big thing for me looking at the first part of the season was the intensity in the training. That has changed. That has changed in the last few weeks, and I think that's something that has to continue changing. That is definitely an area that we need to improve on, is the intensity of the training sessions. All right, no problem.
All right, Dan.
Hi.
As you know, I'm Forever Posh, and I also run the Facebook page. And mostly the criticism I seem to get after each match is from everyone is you seem to be playing people out of their positions, and that don't seem to work for a lot of them. They're saying, why is he playing that side and not that side? And it don't make sense to a lot of our fans. I mean, are you playing them out of position or?
I think you would have to give me some examples, because I mean the one that springs to mind is Michael Smith has played left back, has played left wing back. Santos, I think a few mentioned there, has played right back. I mean, Rico being Ricardo Santos is a centre half. He is a centre half. That's where we want to develop him. He played a few times at right back because Michael Smith was playing left back, and that was due to injuries. I made a mistake in playing him right back in the most recent game, because sometimes that can affect young lads the wrong way, whereas his confidence can go, and that certainly happened to the boy. So clearly I made a mistake there again against Doncaster. My reasoning behind it was Michael Smith, I felt had lost all confidence. He'd played the previous game at left back against Chesterfield, and I couldn't see a performance in him. But sometimes, as much as I want to defend my players, which I obviously will, and I always do, players can kill you as a manager. They really can. Because you watch as spectators, and you'll be going home after that game going, why is Michael Smith not played? Because he played really well in the second half. But I couldn't see that performance in him. So I have to make decisions. Some are right, some are wrong. clearly on that day I shouldn't have played Ricardo right back, because it actually hasn't helped the boy moving forward, and we have to pick him up again. But if that's one example, Michael Smith playing left back would be the other obvious one. I can't really think off the top of my mind if anyone's got any suggestions of other ones that have played that position. Well, good question. He can play centre half, he can play centre midfield. He has played, he started the season very well at right back, but then he obviously got injured. The thing with him playing at centre half, I think that's the most important area of the pitch where you've got to get a partnership. So now really I've got him and Burgess. I'm trying to get a partnership because I've not been able to get one. But I think Michael's best position, if you were to ask him, I think he would say midfield. But I wouldn't be too sure. I think centre half for me in this league, I think he can cope with okay.
Okay, any questions at the back? Hold on 1 second, let me get the microphone to you, 1 second.
Hello, Darren.
Hi.
Considering we don't score any goals, what's up to Vassell?
Well, he started the season brilliantly.
Have he had played for ages?
No, he hasn't, but he obviously got a really bad injury, which affected him. You know, he was out for, I think, 5 to 6 weeks. And since then, others have come in, and really why he's not played is because I've decided to go with other players.
We're not scoring goals, are we?
No, we're not scoring goals, but that can't always come down to the strikers. Sort of, I can't blame the strikers always for that. You've got to have creative players in your football team.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You've got to have a chance.
Britt was never replaced, was he?
Sorry?
Britt was never replaced.
For a one-on-one striker?
Yeah.
Well, we went and bought Luke James.
He was not an net striker, as his record shows, huh?
No, he is a striker. He is a striker. He is definitely a striker. We signed him as a striker because that's what he'd been playing for Hartlepool. And that's how we signed him. But in terms of replacing Brett, it's hard to replace someone like that. The situation with Arsene Bolonga was quite simple. We obviously sold him, as you know. We bought Marcus Madison, we got Luke James in, but the one thing that I wanted to do with the money that we got was to invest it in the training ground. That was the big thing I said to the chairman, and to be fair, he has. And that's possibly the difference between what we've done normally, where we've bought players for a lot of money. Not saying it was cheap. Luke James, he cost $500,000. Marcus Madison cost $250,000, I think it was. We did invest a lot of the money in the training ground, but it is hard to continually replace your best players. It definitely is.
Good evening. Lack of shots on target. Week after week, they're going wide, going over the top. We're not going to score unless we get them on target. And also the injuries. You know, week after week, you've got players going down. Is the training methods right?
Well, the first part of your question, I couldn't agree with you more. We definitely don't hit the target enough. I can go over many games where we've missed the target, and the quality of that part of the pitch and hitting the target is going to improve. It's not just going to improve on the pitch when you see it on a Saturday or a Tuesday night. It's going to improve in training. You know, some days in training the quality's not there either. The general end part of the game, when I say that, I mean the last third, the attacking area, has been nowhere near good enough this season. That for me has been one of the fundamental reasons that we've failed to score in 10 games, which is most unusual for us as a team. We've always been very attacking, but that we need to get more consistency in the quality of that end of the pitch. Injury-wise, training methods. That's physios, sports scientists, call them what you want, are always judged on injuries, first and foremost. We've had 21 injuries this season. Most recent one's the goalkeeper, Ben. But you would judge it on muscle injuries. We've had 5 muscle injuries, but we've had 21 injuries. And I look at all the injuries individually. We've had most of them, I would say, 19 of them on the pitch, 2 of them on the training ground. The most muscle injuries we got was the first month of the season, and that was because we made a mistake with pre-season. We worked them too hard. That was a fundamental mistake we made in terms of what we did with them pre-season. And that forced the injuries. We got muscle injuries. You know, Gabby, first game at Rochdale. Boswick, second game against Milton Keynes. Injury straight away, and it was muscle injuries. And that was because the pre-season we did, and what we looked to do, we generally worked them too hard and they couldn't cope with the intensity of it, and that was a mistake that myself and obviously the staff, in terms of the medical staff, made. But the rest has been, and I'm not going to sit here and make excuses it's about injuries, I'm not going to do that, but we have, you can't get away from the fact we have had 15 injuries through just being unlucky, really. That is the fact. There's no question about that. But the training methods have to change if you get 21 muscle injuries. There's something wrong fundamentally with the training if you get 21 muscle injuries. We haven't got that. We've got 5 muscle injuries. The majority have been at the start of the season, because what I'm saying is we did make a mistake with the pre-season.
Hi. Going back to goals, obviously you don't seem to be getting very many, and I think you came out and said Aaron McLean's loan, possibly not extending that, so are we in the market for another striker, or are we just trying to find some goals from the players we've got?
Well, Aaron McLean's obviously up in 3 games' time. There's no discussions at the moment to extend that, so that leaves us at the moment with Aaron, Washington, Vassell, James and Barnett, but obviously Ty's not really part of the plans of the club. The way I played on Saturday, it's really 3 attackers behind 1 striker. At the moment, we're not really on the lookout to bring anyone in until we get players out of the club. That's a simple fact. That's where we're at the moment. Obviously, we've had to bring a goalkeeper in today because Ben's been injured. But at the moment, no, we're going with what we've got, really.
For a side that has won 1 league game of the last 12, why should we have faith as you as the manager and the team to turn this around when we've been so poor throughout this time?
That's a good question. I thought it would be a question I thought would come. I would look back at what I have done as a manager. Not that that saves you in a job. There's no question about that. That's not the reason I'm saying that. And the success I've had at this football club in particular, and I would say this has been the hardest time throughout the whole 7-8 years, whatever it is, without a question. We all know that, sat here, that this has been my hardest time as a manager. I'm not going to talk about any other manager. It's just about me as a manager here. And in the Championship, we obviously had defeats, but that was slightly different because we were a league up. And in League One this season, it's been nowhere near good enough. Nowhere near. And I would imagine 95% of managers would have gone. I don't know how many would have resigned, but I would imagine that they would have gone in terms of being sacked. So I don't think that the right thing for me to do, me personally, is to resign. Because I don't think it can always be about winning games. It can always be about promotions. It can always be about selling players for £5 or £6 million. Football doesn't work that way. So I'm going to see this through. I am doing the best I can. I'm not sat at home watching television. I'm trying to do the best I can. At the moment, it is failing. I'm not getting away from that. And I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to win Saturday and we're going to win 12 games in a bounce, because there's no point in me saying that. I hope that happens, but there's no point I can guarantee that. What I am saying is I'm doing the best I can to my ability, and I do believe, looking back, that my ability will be good enough and it will come through, and that's why I'm not resigning, because I've got to get through the tough times as well as the good times. Simple as that, really. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Do you ever look at teams like Swindon and Bristol City? They made us look really ordinary. Do you ever look at their tactics and think we can learn from that and change anything we're doing?
I think you've got to look at all teams. All teams. Yeah. We do. We analyse, and we show players, all different players from other teams. Normally, you would say Premiership teams in terms of strikers, showing different strikers and things like that. You have to learn from all teams. I think Bristol City and Swindon have been the standout teams for me, and it shows that in the league. But yeah, of course you learn from it. I mean, the game against Bristol City is probably the most one-sided game for the opposition I can remember at home. I have to say we were completely outclassed, and you have to credit to them, but we were way off it on the day. But yeah, you have to learn. I mean, they play a similar formation. They play 3 at the back. Swindon in particular are very expansive, whereas we haven't found a formula to find a consistent formation. In terms of Saturday was the 4th formation we've played this season. Obviously, that's my decision, but there has been reasons for that decision, and the main one has been the injuries. We have to find a way and a consistent way of keeping the same formation and try to keep a consistent team. I think that will make a big difference. Bristol City managed to go play the same team for 10 games in a bounce. That does make a difference. But the answer to your question, yeah, of course we'll look at opposition, we'll look at what they did well, we show all the stuff in terms of leading up to games and after games. You have to always learn from opposition. I think we would probably all agree that Bristol City is the best team we've seen here so far this season anyway.
Evening, Darren.
Hi.
Just wondered if you could clarify a few points regarding our playing style. Yeah. I can only really make these observations based on home fixtures over the last 12 months, but I've seen most of the games. I've not been to many away games, but our playing style at home seems to be, when we're in possession, we seem to like to play quite patiently, shall we say, out of the back, play across the back from left to right, probably using Jack Payne in the middle just to sweep across the bowl. We don't seem particularly incisive to get into the middle third or the final third. Just an observation. Again, our wide men don't particularly seem to be looking to go past a player, either to get to the byline and cross or to get the ball into our front men. So therefore, really, from what I've seen, our forward men who we're blaming for not scoring the goals are actually starved of possession. So that, when we're in possession, that's one side of it. However, what worries me a little bit more is when we're out of possession, we don't seem very ambitious and look to press high and to win the ball back quickly. We seem more content to get back behind the ball and wait for the attacking side to break down again. But then, when we've got the ball in our half, it's back to the same old again, when we seem very slow and not very incisive. Now, with a club playing at home, supposedly with ambition for to get promotion, we should really be looking to get in the opposition's faces. They're coming to us. We don't seem to be. The tempo seems to have dropped in the last year, from what I remember. From the, shall we say, the good old days. So I just wondered, what's your ethos? What's the playing style that we're trying to put through the staff at the moment?
Well, your sort of observation's a very good one there, and the playing style in terms of both on the ball and off the ball is we've never really changed that too much. We did when we went into the Championship, tweaked it a little bit. On the ball, we play the same way in terms of it doesn't matter what formation. We try and play out from the back. We try and play through the thirds of the pitch as quickly as we can, although at times it is too slow. I totally agree with that. The tempo moving from the back to in terms of the middle of the pitch can be too slow, and that's been a problem this season, especially when teams sit behind the ball against us at home, which happens a lot. We don't move the ball quick enough. We don't get in behind the defence quick enough, and it's something we're continually working on. Off the ball, I've looked at a lot of games, especially at home, because I've always believed, as you said there, you have to press at home. You can't give teams too much time on the ball, and it's something we do work on. I don't think we've done it anywhere near well enough. I really don't. I think we did it well on Saturday. I think we did everything well, actually, on Saturday for the first third of the game, and I thought we played with a lot more intensity in terms of how we wanted to play at home, and that's something that has been put into training, as I mentioned earlier. The intensity both on and off the pitch, there has been a huge emphasis on it going up a gear, if not 2 gears, and that's something that we're continually working on. I totally agree with you on the pressing. I don't think we've pressed teams well enough, and we've never really wanted to set off teams. The one game I do think of, when we played Swindon, we let their goalkeeper have it. We changed that at half-time. That looked a little bit too comfortable for him, if you remember the game at home. And if that's something you're thinking of, that's right. But in terms of how we want to press and playing out from the back is always something we've done. We're just not doing it quick enough or well enough, and we just have to continue trying to get better at it, really. All right,
Darren. How much is the state of the pitch to blame for the style of play?
It's difficult. It is difficult. But again, I'm not going to make an excuse. It is more difficult for a home team to play on a poorer pitch, shall we call it, because you're always trying to force the game. But I'm not going to make that as an excuse, because I've seen performances here from away teams where they've passed the ball very well. So it is what it is. We have to go on with that.
Do we know what's happened to it, though? Because the last 2 seasons it's been a hell of a lot better, hasn't it?
Yeah, the simple fact of it is the investment that we put into the training ground had to sort of fall away somewhere else. So it was just trying to balance it out, really, in the best way we could. And we felt this is a one-off season. Although we wanted to invest in the pitch, we just felt that the investments elsewhere we had to do, some things that obviously I'm not in control of, is something we had to do, especially the training ground. I was big on that. So we've maybe not invested in the pitch as we wanted to. In saying that, there is more investment going on to the pitch as we're moving forward. But the difference being is we didn't rip the pitch up and start again this season, whereas every other season we have. That's the main difference that you're seeing at the moment. But listen, your question, I'm not going to sit here and say the pitch is a problem.
If I can just pick that up, Adi, just to qualify what the gaffer has just said. In every previous season, we've taken the pitch up, corroded it, relayed it, lasered it, and done everything we can to it. We were advised that wouldn't make a lot of difference for this season, because next season we are planning to have a whole new style of pitch in there with new drainage. Some drainage work has just been completed today, but also the other thing that has happened is we've got what's known as POA disease in the pitch, and what that stops the grass doing in its earlier stages of when it was sowed is rooting any deeper than a few centimetres. So what you are effectively seeing is there is only a couple of inches of root below the top turf, and so the tackles are just ripping it out all the time consistently, and there is nothing that you can do from that point of view to change it, other than there's no opportunity to do anything else than replace 2,000 divots. I wouldn't like to be doing it, the poor sods. After every game, it's then rolled, layered, it's fed again, so that we're doing everything we can. But the disease stopped it rooting. That's the reason you're seeing it ruck so badly.
Can you comment your personal comments and players' reactions to the chairman's Twitter comments on Saturday? And also, have you revised your expectations for the season? Because really, we don't really want to go up to the Championship with the way we're playing now. We'd like to go up.
Yeah, well, we had the usual meeting on Monday morning to go through the game on Saturday, and obviously we had to bring up the comments that the chairman had made on Twitter. In terms of how it's affected the players, I don't think it really affects them in terms of our motivation, because they know themselves that we're way off the standards that we try and set for ourselves. He's made the comments out of sheer frustration. He was under, I think, the right word, pressure, because obviously I think a lot of people seen the fact that he decided to take us to Spain as a reward, which it wasn't. That wasn't the reason why he took us there, and I can explain why he did take us there. And we went and lost another game after coming back from there, and it was just sheer frustration from the man. And he's hurting himself, and he's been a supporter, as you know, of me and the players. I have to say, I stress, and the players. So he made his comments. In this day and age, social media is a huge thing. The chairman goes on Twitter quite a lot. He owns a football club, so he's within his rights. The one thing I would say, he didn't tell any lies in what he said. He told the truth, and the players have to accept that. They have to be man enough, and that's what I said to them in the meeting. They have to be man enough to deal with it. It's just what everyone else was thinking. It's just unusual that the owner of a football club would say it, but I think you're in a day and age now where owners and chairmen, call them what you want, are more involved in that sort of thing, and that's just part and parcel of football these days. It's just, I'm still finishing. Just 1 sec.
Yeah.
Well, my expectations at the start of this season were obviously to get to where we wanted to get in terms of make sure we try and get promoted, either be top 2 or top 6. Top 2, no. The expectations are not that anymore, and I think we're fortunate that there's been so many inconsistent teams. On a normal average, we'd have been 10 points off the playoffs. We've looked at the stats on a normal average, a normal season through the last 10 seasons. You know, we're only 5-6 points, is it? 5 points, I think, off. So it still gives us a fighting chance. We have to say we're a little bit lucky in the form we're on. So if we find form like we want to, then I think the expectations are that we can still get a chance of getting in the top 6. Maybe luckily because of other teams' inconsistency.
Since you've been here, we've had great times, but you said that you really are passionate about this club and you don't want to give up. But I don't want to end up at the end of the season fighting for relegation because you don't want to give up. When are you going to say, OK, or what are your plans for the future? Because you've got to tell us. You can't take us to the end of the season and we're fighting for relegation because you didn't want to give up.
Yeah, I understand that. That's a good question. I fully understand that I'm not going to be sitting here at the end of the season saying, oh, I just didn't want to resign and we find ourselves in League 2 where it all sort of started. I totally appreciate that. All I can say to you is I don't think it'll get to that. I really don't. I think we'll start winning games again. I have to have that belief. It doesn't look like that at the moment. And if I didn't have that belief that we could win games, and it's not about belief that I'm going to be stubborn enough to say, look, there's no way I'm resigning and I've got that belief because it just suits Darren Ferguson. I'm not saying that. If I didn't have the belief within what I'm working with, then I would resign. I generally would. If I didn't see what I think I am seeing, and unless I've got blinkers on, that there's a group of players that do want to change this and they're not giving up and they're not fighting for the manager, then I would resign. There's no question about that. But I'm not seeing that. And that is the honest truth. I would have gone if I felt the players had gone. And that is the truth. And I don't see that at the moment. And I've been involved with a group of players that, for whatever reason, just sort of, you know, for want of a better word, toss it off. And these players aren't doing that. If I honestly did see that, and I honestly did think that I couldn't have the belief in both myself and the players, there's no way I want to take this club down to League 2. Absolutely not. Just out of stubbornness. And I've got to make that clear to you. You know, I've been at this club 8 years. It's not like most normal clubs where managers flitter in between 1 and 2 years. I've got a lot of affinity for this football club. A lot. And that was the reason, one of the reasons why I wanted to progress it to a different level when I signed my contract in the summer. So, if we continued losing and it was getting to that point, then maybe a different decision would be made. And if I seen the players just forgetting about it and not trying, I would have gone. I would really have gone. That is the truth. Phil.
Hi. You mentioned a minute ago about the players. I'm not trying to suggest that you've lost them, but do you think there's a difference in the attitude between the players we've got now and the ones we had before? Because, for example, I remember when we had a Sombalonga, every time we conceded a corner, he'd be sprinting back into the box to help his team defend. Now, when we lose the ball, concede a corner, something like that, it seems more half-hearted getting back in, trying to defend. And I think that doesn't help when you've got half your players that need to get back in that don't particularly want to, so they're doing it half-heartedly, and we seem to be suffering because of that.
No, I think I've got to sit here and try and defend my players and without, you know, killing myself here. You know, I've got to defend myself as well. So there's a bit of both. A lot of the time, if you're talking about defending corners, a lot of the time we actually leave 3 up anyway, so there's no need for them to get back. But we've spoken about certain things in terms of how we want to be perceived on the And the biggest thing that's come out of this sort of last couple of weeks that we could reflect on, because obviously we had a gap between games, was the intensity in the way we're doing everything. And that is something that you're obviously talking about. And that has been spoken about. There has been the thing about, look, we felt, or listen, the players, whatever you want to call it, there has been that sort of, I'm feeling sorry for myself because we're losing every week. That has to change. We have to go at a different level in terms of work ethic and work effort. And I think you're quite right in terms of fans can always see that if players are having a go, I think you will respond to that. I generally do believe that. You know, the other game, I think it was Doncaster, where Luke James has made 3 different runs, typical of what Mikel Smith used to do. There was a general response from the fans. You could see it. And I think, and we have spoken about this. We have spoken about that. If they give a go, and it's not deliberate, I don't believe it's deliberate. I think it can come from a lack of confidence, where they've just lost energy or whatever. But we have spoken about it at length more than once, that if you give it everything you've got and it's seen like that and perceived like that, then I think as fans you'll always give them a chance. And I can understand what you're saying in terms of, I don't know so much about the corner kick thing, but in terms of how it looks to yourselves. I think you will always give players a chance if it's seen that they're putting the maximum effort in, and that is something we have spoken about.
Hi Darren, well done for tonight. You've got some balls doing this, believe me. I'll put my hands up. I've been one of your big haters just recently, although you have been a good manager the last few years. You know, really annoying. Everyone's getting frustrated with it. I've taken a lot on board tonight what you said, and actually it's sinking in. You know, it's a hard job being a manager, etc. Not really a question towards you about this. What's happened with Grant? I know he's gone to Lingfield. Is there any reasons behind this or anything? I mean, can you talk about it? Is it personal or?
No. It's nothing personal. It's quite an easy one, really. Quite a simple one. When and I agree with, I would imagine, most years in here. I think Grant's been brilliant for this club. I know a lot of the fans really like him. I liked him as a player. When we went to the previous pre-season Ireland, Grant's contract was up. We gave him a new 2-year contract. The chairman at the time only wanted to give him 1 because of his age, but I felt that Grant could really help the club in terms of, I wanted him on board to the coaching staff, in terms of coaching in particular younger players at that time. So obviously that year's gone. We're now into the 2nd year of his contract, and Grant feels that he should, or thinks he can, continue playing week in, week out, whereas I don't. I really don't. I think that we've gone a direction where I want to play younger players. We've got Grant a coaching role within the club in terms of working with the youth. And there's been speculation on it, but there's been absolutely no fallout between Grant and I at all. None at all. He left the other day, came and seen me, said thanks for all your help and everything you've done. And I have helped him in the sense of trying to get him coaching, because I did the same with Micah Hyde. I want more experience, and we haven't got a lot of experienced players in that sense. We're quite young and always have been. I want my more experienced players like a Grant, like Heidi, to come in the coaching, because they know the club, they know the foundations of the club, they know how we work as a football club. But Grant just didn't feel that he shouldn't have been playing. He felt he should have been playing week in and week out. It didn't help him that he maybe played 1 week and then played for a month. It doesn't help a player that age. So there was a different thinking there, but it was just, listen, he's got an opportunity to play in weekend. He's going back home. And I really hope it works out for the lad. I think he will go into coaching. I think he's got that about him. I do think he should have done more coaching, I have to say that, and I'm not saying anything out of turn, because I did say that to Grant. That was the one thing that I thought he could have done a bit more of. But I wish him all the best, as we all do, I'm sure.
Hi, Darren.
Hi.
Fair play again tonight.
All right.
We've touched on it before about Luke James.
Yeah.
The mantra all from the start of the season was patience, patience, patience. Now, last Saturday we ended up with playing the team second from bottom with 1 striker up front who hasn't scored a league goal all season. Now, is that fair on Luke James? And to be honest, with all the millions that we've had in, I mean, we're talking, over the years, nearly £30 million, we end up with a striker who hasn't scored all season, playing up front on his own at home against a team second from bottom of the league. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Is it too much pressure on somebody like Luke James, yeah?
Right.
And secondly, how, with all the money that we have had in and the money that we've spent, are we left with literally with no strikers on the pitch that have scored a goal?
Well, I mean, some have scored. Obviously, Luke hasn't. Luke hasn't. You know, and I did say when Luke James signed, just talking about him as an individual at the moment, that it would take him a little bit longer. You know, and I did say that to him face to face when he signed it. I think I said that actually publicly. Has taken him a little bit longer. The reason we played one striker on Saturday was because I wanted to get my most creative or more creative players in the team behind him. I do think it's a good system. I do, home or away, I do think it's a good system. We ended up with Aaron in the team, Marcus in the team, and John Newell in the team. You know, and there was a chance that John Taylor might have been fit for the game, might have been him in the team as well, in terms of one of them would obviously to come out. So that's why I played that way, because it gets my creative players in the team. And I think as a striker, even though it's one, I think if you had them three behind him, if I did, I'd be quite happy, because I think they should be creating him chances. There's no question about that. Now on Saturday alone, I think Aaron had a couple of shots at the opening period of the game, but if you don't have your more creative players doing it on the day, then the striker, the number 9, that is Luke, he is going to struggle. Is that too much pressure for him? I wouldn't have said so, no, not really. Not the way that he's gone about his business. He's a great lad, he's a very hard working boy. I think he just needs a break, you know, but I don't think it's too much pressure for him. I think generally he should get more chances playing with them three behind him, I really do.
Hello, Darren.
Hi.
I've only supported Posh for 6 years, and this is the worst team I've ever seen you have, right? Home and away. When you look at the present team, you think, well, who could go into the Championship? Who's going to come looking for these players? And I don't see anybody wanting any of them. So I think you've got an hard job trying to get these players to play even in Division 1. And the other thing is, I want to go back to this commitment thing. I don't see it week in and week out. Colchester on Saturday were fully committed to get back, and when they got the ball to get forward, I watched Enclair, Newell, at the forwards. Once they lost the ball, that was it. They weren't interested in getting back. And we seem to end up with only 2 defenders. So I don't think these players are good enough, or not as good as you think they are. Now, and I could be wrong, but it's my perception. Because, and now the other thing is, 2 weeks ago against Doncaster, you put a team out in the second half, and I think John Newell was left back, and we had McLean, and they played really well in that second half. And everybody said, oh, there's green shoots here. And it's gone then. The next game, we didn't play them. And I also support you playing 1 up front and 3 at the back. But then in the second half, you took 2 of their players off, and you just put these forwards on who have done nothing all season, and I don't understand why you did that.
Well, I'll answer the last bit first, because that's obviously in my mind in terms of the substitutions that were made against Colchester. I didn't think Marcus Madison was having his best game. I've got to be honest. Yeah, he is a flair player, and he's a creative player. And I do think, personally, I think Mendes Lang's a good substitution. I do. I think he's a very good impact player. I think he comes on and does well in games, and I thought he did that again on Saturday. So that was the reason for making them substitutions. In terms of it being the worst team in the last 6 years, well, look, the stats would suggest that. The results would suggest that. But I think you've got to give them over the course of the season for it to really sort of be an actual fact. But, you know, if you've only supported us for the last 6 years, then you've seen some good teams in the last 6 years. There's no question about that. This year, this team alone, or us as a group, when I say team, I mean all of us, are finding it difficult. And there's no getting away from the fact that you would say that this is the worst run, results and everything else in the last 6 years has been. So I can't sit here and argue with that. I really can't. Now, whether I overrate them or not is... Or rate them as much as yourself and what you're seeing is there's got to be a difference between what you're seeing, not what you're seeing, but how you see that and say it to me as a manager. I can't sit here and say my players are not good enough. You know, that would be me giving up on them. You know, I can't say that. You know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can, of course you can. Yeah, you can say that. No. Yeah. Yeah, at the beginning. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they gave up, but listen. When the simple fact of that is where I look at it is when you're playing Rochdale the first game of the season. You mean we win 1-0, and the last 10 minutes they're all over us, and we're putting heads in the way and faces in the way and knees in the way and all the rest of it. We go to Bradford with a patched up team because we've got injuries. We play 3 at the back. It's like the Alamo, and we're putting. Do you not think I ask myself these questions? Of course I do, and I ask the players. And I don't know whether it's just the fact that their confidence has got so low or whatever, but I generally don't think, and I do go back to this, it can look to the eye as if it is a lack of commitment. But what I see is I do generally feel that they are committed to the football club, and I don't see that they're not. Whether it's a confidence thing, it just drains on my dome. I totally agree with that. I agree with that. I've seen a difference between Rochdale and Bradford and other games this season. I do. I have seen that. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, Darren, I think this is probably something that you can cite at the last, I don't know how many years. I remember saying we never draw, but we don't draw. I know we're not winning at the moment, but, some of these matches that we're losing by the odd goal, why don't we draw enough games? I know we all want to win, but you put 5 points on our total out of the last 12 games, and we are not here tonight. It's as simple as that, because we're in the top 6. Why don't we kill game? I mean, a good example probably would have been Coventry away. I don't know what you said to them at half-time, but they obviously didn't listen because they came out second half and did everything but what you told them to do, because we went from 2-0 up, 15 minutes later we're 3-2 down. That's a game we could have drawn, or should have drawn, probably should have won it, but a draw would have been a point on the table, which we seem to just keep throwing away all the time. We don't draw enough games.
I agree with you. Totally. You're absolutely correct. I can think of Yeovil away, last minute. Gillingham away, last minute. Games where you think, how have we not won that? Even Scunthorpe at home. And listen, of course we want to beat Scunthorpe at home. And this has been actually over 12 months, not just season. We have not drawn enough games. And that is definitely a stat that hasn't gone away, and that's a worrying one. That is a worrying stat. Now, whether it's because I do want to win games so much, and we just continue trying to win games, whether it's because we're a little bit naive in terms of we're young and we don't know how to hold on to a draw, I don't know. Can't put my finger on that one. I think a lot of it may be the fact that we just still want to win games. We've got to learn a way how to not to lose games. And I've said that many times after games, and you're right. If you pick up 5-6 points, you are in the playoffs, and that's something that we have to address. Sometimes you have to accept that you're not going to win a game, but don't lose it.
Good evening, Fergie.
Hi. He always calls me Fergie.
I've just been going to the home games this season, yeah. But I sit in the family stand. Last season, Bobby, how do you pronounce it? Bobby, our keeper, I can hear him in the family stand up a tier, yeah, from back row. This season, yeah, why does Alnwick, hold the ball so long when we got players unmarked? So, what's your best formation, or push them, tell them to our right back and left back, to call for it? What do you think to that?
I've actually sensed the frustration in the last month or so when Ben's had the ball at times, in terms of from yourselves, in terms of not releasing it quick enough. We don't tell Ben to hold on to the ball. We want to play, hence the reason why we play 3 up when we're defending corners. We want to break away quickly. In fact, it happened on Saturday where the ball got thrown to Madison and we couldn't release our hand quick enough, if you remember it. There's no given reason in terms of, the only one I could say, Ben, since Bradford, has had a problem with his thigh. Hence the fact he's now out for 6 to 8 weeks. So he's not actually been able to kick the ball as we wanted him to. So it's always got to be throws. In general, it is throws anyway. But no, in terms of the vocal things, I think Ben's quite vocal, really. Perhaps not as vocal as Bobby, but we're not got a very vocal team in general, really. But no, we always work on counter-attacks. That is why the main sort of point behind that is because I can say we can work on this and that and all the rest of it, and I could just camouflage it by saying we do this X, Y and Z, but when we defend corners, you have to see how we attack in terms of we leave 3 up, predominantly leave 3 up to counter-attack. And that is why we do it. But at times I agree with you, I'm frustrated that Ben doesn't release the ball quick enough.
Can I just very quickly pick up on the Ben thing? Because when he first came, his kicking was absolutely brilliant. He came for every cross, and he commanded the whole 18-yard area, not just the 6-yard box. Since it might have coincided with Bradford and his thigh, that obviously hitherto we didn't know about. He very rarely comes for a cross now, like he should, like he did. His kicking is atrocious. His bar gripping style is absolutely woeful. And I disagree with you, not on much, but on this. I stand London Road and probably only 8 yards behind him. I never hear it.
Okay, well.
Never hear a thing. But certainly coming for the crosses and his kicking, both of those were outstanding when he first come, and I don't know where they gone.
I actually, I think he's very positive coming from crosses area. I do. I think he comes out, and now whether he's not lost it, but whether he's not done it as often as not, maybe so. The kicking's definitely been affected. He's a great kicker of the ball, but he generally has been injured. And again, I go back to it because I want to make this clear. I'm not here to make excuses about injuries, but a fact is a fact. He has generally had a problem with his thigh since, September time. Not to stop him playing. He's managed to get through it. The problem we had was Christmas period, where he was in real pain. And the decision I had to make then was to stick Joe Day in on the second game or play Ben, and I decided to play Ben. And then he had a break, and all of a sudden felt really good before the Colchester game, but it's gone again, and now obviously the injuries is what it is. But I think that's why his kicking's been affected.
Okay, next question.
Hi, Darren.
Hi.
I think results are obviously disappointing for everyone, but I think from my personal perspective, the most disappointing thing is the level of the performances and just the lack of goals. It was touched on earlier that I think the real problem is there's just no real tempo to our play. We're very pedestrian. I think it's very easy for teams to regroup and defend against us because I think there seems to be a real limited passing range from our deeper or holding midfielders, if you like, looking at Jack Payne, Jermaine Anderson, Bozzy when he's played there. There seems to be a lot of square passing, a lot of passing the ball back. There doesn't seem to be a lot of incision or incisive passing, which is getting us forward quicker and able to get teams on the back foot. Saturday was another example of that. Yes, I think first 20, 25 minutes we started the game well, but we didn't really create what I would call a clear-cut goal-scoring opportunity. There was a lot of shots from the edge of the box, but there wasn't a lot of quick getting the ball wide, getting the ball into decent areas where we could create. Now, the one bright spot this season, I think, has been Joe Newell. I think he's probably been our most consistent player. Have you thought or considered playing Joe in a deeper role? Because he's quite committed. I think he gets around the pitch. He's not scared to put a tackle in. And I think with his increased or better passing range from that area, it might, particularly in home games, might see us get teams on the back foot a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I have considered it. I think Joe Newell can play centre midfield. There's no question about that. He has got a good range of passing. The one thing he would bring you as well is his balance to the team because he's left-footed. I think on Joe, in terms of how consistent he's been very consistent this season. He has been probably one of our more consistent performers in different positions, left back, left midfield, in the whole of a diamond. But the big thing that you mentioned there is obviously the tempo, when we get to the last third. Listen, this is not something I'm not aware of. This is not something that we continually work on. This is something I know we have been nowhere near good enough at that area of the pitch. That has been the biggest problem for us, without a shadow of a doubt. I know we've lost bad goals, but you know what? We've always lost bad goals. I feel we've just outscored teams, and that philosophy has never changed. The quality in the last third, and even today in training, they had. Well, I think we got to about 11:30. We trained for an hour. The quality wasn't there. I stopped it. We trained again this afternoon. The quality, for whatever reason, the consistent quality has not been there. Again on Saturday, we watched the game back. The first 25 minutes we played very well. Erhan had a couple of shots. You had a couple of crosses that were in the box. There weren't enough bodies in the box. That's something we need to rectify in this formation anyway. But the tempo wasn't quick enough. and it needs to get quicker. And that's something that, looking at the first part of the season, because obviously we've just started the second part, we have to get better at. We have definitely identified that the tempo intensity in the last third has got to be better. How we do that, we've got to keep working at it. That is what we've got to do, and we've got to take it into games.
Okay.
All right.
One of our philosophies for over the years has been bringing up the young players and getting players from lower leagues that have worked out well.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, and in other teams, that it looks like we could do some more experienced players who's been there and done it to help these young players. And whenever it comes to signing new players, we never look to sign someone that's got the experience of playing League One football or above that the younger players can look to and turn to. And also, we lost what I believe was probably our three best players last season, and not replaced them with players that you know are going to be somewhere in that region of player, as in Sombalonga, Little and Rowe.
Well, I think the philosophy of the club, you're obviously aware of it, everyone is, what the philosophy of the football club is. And that's, we do try and bring younger, hungry players in that have maybe been rejected elsewhere. And we've got, without a doubt, the best record, I feel, in the country at doing it. And then we never stand in the way, and what we do is obviously sell if we get the right fee, make the profit, and then reinvest back into the football club. And we've continually done this since, well, certainly since the chairman and I have been here, and we've got a good record at doing it. In terms of experience, if you look at the team, players like Jack Payne's not old in terms of age, but he's played over 200 games. He's got experience. Yeah. But Jack Payne has played over 200 odd games. I mean, do you mean not games? You mean age? No. Grant McCann, but Grant McCann actually is the only example that we can use. But we haven't got that we haven't got that player at the moment. Because the philosophy of the club, we wouldn't. I don't think. Listen, we have spoken about it, and we have obviously spoken about, the chairman and I, about, do we need to go and try and get one or two more experienced players? Believe it or not, there is one or two particular players we have tried to get with a bit more experience, not in the midfield area. But generally, the philosophy of the football club has worked, and worked very well. And we don't want to go away from that too much. But I understand your point. But we have looked at one or two more experienced players that have got one League One experience and Championship experience. But unfortunately, we've not been able to get them. It just hasn't worked out. In particular, certainly the last month, we've been working away, getting one in particular, but it just hasn't worked out. The club won't let them come out on loan. Now we can buy them, but again, financially, we're not in that position.
Okay, next question.
Hello, Darren. So what was the justification behind selling Lesney? Because in my opinion, he was the best keeper since Mark Tyler. And I know the club have got this 1 year policy where they've got 1 year left on the contract, they'll sell the player. But in my opinion, he was so effective last season.
Well, I think the big thing to mention on that is the policy. We looked at Bobby offering a new contract, and we couldn't get around to sort of agreeing to it. So the policy is what it is. I feel... And again, it's about opinions. I think we've signed a far better goalkeeper in Ben. I do. And that's why we brought Ben in, and I made him number one straight away. And obviously, Bobby being in the last year of his contract, we had to let him go elsewhere.
I don't need that.
Come on, use it because you need to pick it up.
Can't speak now. It's not a question, it's opinions. Now, I don't like mentioning individuals, but if you think that Mendes Lang is a good footballer, this club's going nowhere. I've been coming here 68 years, and I don't think I've seen such rubbish play what we've seen this season. I mean, teams don't beat us, we beat ourselves. They know exactly what we're going to do. I mean, Saturday, forward, he got on the right wing 3 times, put over 3 good crosses.
And we were our players stood looking at each other. They couldn't have cared less. And if you think Joe Newell's a good player, he either can't or won't tackle. And to me, no. He scored 1 goal this season. I thought Bristol City were a good side, but we beat ourselves. The stupidest goals I've ever seen in my 68 years.
Well, look, in terms of Mendes Lang, what I said was I think he's a good impact player off the bench, Jack. That's what I said. I agree, but that was why I made the point about being an impact player. How many times have I started him? How many?
Well, why is he still here? If we're paying players to play, they're professional. When we're at work, or was at work, we never used to go to the form and have 10 minutes, so what do you want me to do
I think you should take the next team talk, if I'm going to be honest. Jack, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Moving away from Mendes Lang. I mean, look, the Joe Newell thing. Do you know what? You're right on the button there, but he hasn't scored enough goals. You're absolutely correct. He hasn't scored enough goals. Okay, there's no question. To score 1 goal in a midfield player is not enough. But as a whole, we haven't scored enough goals. But I don't think you can say that Joe Newell hasn't played well this season. Well, he should have scored. I totally agree with that. I'm not disputing that. He should have scored more goals. He needs to score more goals. But in the other argument, I think he has played well in a lot of games this season.
I don't think I've ever said this before, but AD, take the mic.
Thank you. I think if Joe Newell was our problem, we wouldn't be here tonight having a chat. So, also, a quick point somebody made there about Bristol City. I think if we'd spent 32 million quid in 6 years, we possibly might be where they are. I want to congratulate you, Fergie, first of all, on not being as bold as me, because if I told people in my work to do things and they just blatantly ignored me, I think you would be as bold as I am, although you're going a bit grey on the sides, I can tell. Anyway, on Saturday, that formation that you started with was met with wild applause in Ebenezer's, because that was the most attacking formation we've done for donkeys. On the day, 20 minutes gone, the 2 players, certainly the 2 that I thought, Maddison and Otsuma, that should have pushed on, suddenly were 30, 40 yards behind Luke James. And the poor lad, who I think he's got a tremendous work ethic, was looking up, getting the ball in a position where he would look for players to make the run from midfield, and they weren't there. Now, you took Maddison off with, 20, 25 minutes ago. Yeah. Frankly, I'd have took him off after 30 minutes to teach him a lesson that if you tell him to back up the forward, he backs up the forward. Otsuma the same. Although he's a sparkling light, one of the few lights we got at the moment, going forward and stuff, and you don't expect him to come back for a corner, to be fair. He wasn't pushing on either, and I don't know how you've got the patience you've got not to go mental. But my question is going to be, do you not think that you should be influencing it more, i.e. get a player to go down, bring those 2 people in particular over, give them the biggest bollocking they've ever had in their life, and get them to support Luke James? Because that formation, if you played it again, is going to be derided by certain people, spectators, fans, yes, who are the most important people, yep. When in actual fact it could have been an absolutely brilliant way to kickstart our season.
Well, this is the problem that you've got as... well, not a problem, but this is the issue you've got as myself sat here as a manager, is that I would pick teams and people might sit here and think, he's playing against coaches, he's playing 1 up front. And that can be perceived as, what is he doing? I totally understand that. And sometimes I'm my own worst enemy in terms of what certain teams are picked, but they're picked obviously for the right reasons. And I feel that why I picked that team, why I picked that formation, was because I do actually think it was our most creative team. I really do. And I think with them 3 players, they are creative players. But if they don't create on any given day, it does look like you're playing 1 up front. I think there was a header where Luke made and there was no one anywhere near him. And there was a general sigh around the place. And it makes you look a fool at times. But not putting on my players, I've got to trust my players to perform. I have to do it. That's what I've got to get over to them. And then you have to get the balance right, Eddie, between continually ball-licking your players or putting an arm around them. Now, at the moment, if I continually ball-licking them, they're just going to, listen, a lot would say they've gone anyway, but they're going to get worse and worse. So I've got to find the right balance as a manager to work out individually and as a group what to do with them, you know. In the first 25 minutes, we should have been 3-0 up. Would anyone dispute that? So if we score in the first 25 minutes like we should have and gone 3-0 up, there wouldn't have been a complaint. Unfortunately, we didn't, and it's all ifs and buts, of course it is. And what happened after that was the players started getting frustrated, and they started coming deeper. And it was said at half-time, make sure the three, in particular behind Luke, and the fullbacks that played very high on the game on Saturday, and that's how you play the formation, make sure you stay in contact with them and don't get frustrated. Keep doing what you were doing in the first 20 minutes. Eventually, you will break them down. Now, goals do change games. And the goal we lost was an awful goal on a defensive point. And after that, I did think we found it difficult, and I found it more and more frustrating. But on any other given day, we could have been 2 or 3-0 up, and we should have been 2 or 3-0 up on the day. I think it's a good formation, but you're absolutely correct in what you say. If certain players don't do their roles, and I don't think Marcus had a good game. I don't think Joe Newell had a good game. I think he didn't have a great game, but at least produced something. And that's what you need off the players. I am putting my full trust in those players to produce and create chances for every other player and score goals.
I've only got a few more years till I become Jack, and I'd love to be, as like him, still following Ross Owen away at that age. Can you tell Mendes Lang, if there's a free kick on the edge of the area, he doesn't take it? Because 5,000 people saw that he was going to take that free kick on Saturday. The only one who didn't think he was going to take it was Zuma, who obviously got bullied off the ball. Fucking Mendes Lang put it for a throw-in. You know, I mean, what he's got no brain. What he's got as an impact zone is, well, 98 step overs and then a bit of skill, and he's got pace and he's got strength. And the centre half in particular, or full back with 20 minutes to go, he's knackered at that thing, 6'2" and 15 stone, and you should be cramping yourself, but they don't, because step overs mean nothing if you keep your eye on the ball, because he's not actually took the ball anywhere. But set pieces, honestly, what on earth are we doing letting him take?
Well, he's never been on a set piece in the training ground once. So Aaron takes them. You know, and he should have taken them. But that's just sometimes going to happen. He actually got bullied. You're right. And you've got to be strong enough if you're on the set pieces to take them without physically going on the pitch and dragging them off them, which maybe I'm going to have to start doing. You know, there's different examples. Connor Washington was told to take the penalty against Colchester, and Aaron McCann took it. So sometimes that happens, and sometimes I don't think much they can do about it unless you do physically just remove them from the ball. But I think people have got to be strong enough to, if they're told to do something, do it. But you know, going back to the formation, it is one I like. But you're putting a lot of trust in your more creative players. Let's put it that way.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm with the gentleman who's going to ask the last question of the night. Obviously, the Posh Trust have got an event happening next door which you don't want to impinge on, so I'm going to pass you over to the gentleman who's going to ask the last question of the night.
Hi again, Aaron. Just a quick one about the youth policy at the club. It's been heavily financed over the year and heavily backed. Recently, we just let another 2 go to lead the club permanently, and especially young Conlon, who was very, very highly rated. What decision was behind that?
Well, you're talking about obviously Michael Rich and Tom Conlon going to Stevenage. We had high hopes for Conlon in particular, and for both of them really, but they just couldn't get to the consistent level that I thought would have a breakthrough in the first team. And you're absolutely correct. I am putting a lot of more focus on the work and the development of the younger players on the training ground. Those two, the reason for that was I didn't think they were going to affect the first team like I thought they would. So you've got to be careful with the decisions you make first and foremost in terms of when you do sign them, and you've got to also be patient with them. But I just felt, and the positions they played, that they weren't going to have the effect that I thought they would. But in the youth side of things, we've got to we're working really hard on trying to develop our own players and bring our own players through. We've done very well, as has been said, in terms of buying players from non-league clubs and that, but the focus now is to produce our own players. It's still a work in progress. I think we're still got a lot of work to do, but there's 1 or 2, younger players 15, 16-year-olds that were very hopeful of coming all the way through, and I think that's the next stage for this football club. That's where we're trying to get to, and that is, you know, and if that is the last question, fine, but that is something I have to get across to you, that when the chairman and I decided that he would give me a new contract, the big remit within that contract for me was to develop the younger players, to develop the training. And don't get me wrong, that's not getting away from the results, because the results will always be the first and foremost of anything within a football club. But I do, whenever it is, like I know some of you want me out tomorrow, that's fine, but I do want to leave more than just a football club in terms of what you've seen on the pitch. That's a big thing that I'm thinking about. You know, and if I get to the end of this contract, it'll be 10 years at this football club. And I don't want to I want to leave the club in a far stronger position than when the day arrived. That's part of what my makeup, and it's part of what I've said to the chairman. So if I leave the club whenever, and we're back in the Championship, and we've got a training ground that's developing players for years and years and years, and the development of the academy is a sound one, then I know I've got that bit right. And that is why I wanted the chairman to invest so much into the training ground. And look, one last thing I will say to you is, all you get to see me is on the touchline, and when I do my interviews after the game. And I've got to be careful what I say to the press. This is different. You know, there's one or two local press here, which is fine. This is different in the sense I can speak to you openly, and I can come across, and I'm aware of it. I'm trying to think of the right word. Sometimes it can come across as arrogant and not overly bothered or quite aloof. Listen, this is hurting me more than probably yourselves. I know it's your football club, but it's a big part of me. I'm not only going to fight for the football club in the results, short term and long term. I've got to fight for my own career. You know, if I was to not get this right and was to get sacked, my career is going to suffer, and I don't want that. You know, so there's a big thing going into this, in terms of, one, the long-term goal for the football club, which I've just spoken about, and the short-term. No one's making excuses, no one's denying that the results and performances are nowhere near. But we are trying our hardest to rectify that and to get back to the level that we have got to in the past. That's all we're trying to do. At the moment, I know it's not good enough. And as a manager, I take full responsibility for that. I know you're frustrated, I know you're angry, but I go back to when I first spoke to you tonight. I've given you the respect as supporters of the football club to sit here and answer the questions that I knew would be difficult. Doesn't mean anything. Don't expect a pat on the back. I don't expect applause for it. Don't expect anything for it. But I will say that we're trying our hardest as a football club to rectify this and get it back to where we think it should be. And you need to know that. All right, so obviously thanks for coming tonight, and hopefully I've answered the questions as honestly as I could. All right, thanks.